Boom. Hello, and welcome to the Rock Metal Podcast. I am your host, John Harris. On my right-hand side, actually my left-hand side now, is my right-hand man, Gabriel. And that sample you just heard was Death of Wolves by Close the Hatch, who I've got on the show with me right now. They've got a new album called Modern Witchcraft, which was released via Red Moth Records in May. Right now I'm being joined by Steve to share some stories about the music and share more info about the band. So Steve, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely great to have you on. All right, coming back from the track Death of Wolves. Now, I guess my big question, or my first question, is with a track title such as Death of Wolves, what is this track about other than the death of wolves? Or is that just it?
Well, it's a couple of things. Throughout the course of the 7 releases we've put out, there's been a handful of songs with wolves in the title. So it's kind of a play on that. And then the other side of it is it's kind of more of a metaphoric thing to your inner hesitations to do things that you want to do. So the concept is just, if you're something you're wanting to pursue and you're worried about the reception of it externally, or maybe you're afraid of the risk, to just kind of go ahead and try the thing if you're able to do it, and worry about the consequences later type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a bit personal, but is this something that you dealt with yourself about a particular situation?
Yeah, I would say at different places in life, and also with this group of songs on this record, it was kind of a metaphor in relation to that too, and that previously we were much more aggressive, and there was a lot more screaming, and the songs were, and just in general, a lot heavier. And this record is a pretty big departure from that, with no screaming at all on the entire record. So it's kind of a nod to that as well.
Yeah, you mentioned there are a few departures on this record. Was that a conscious choice, or was it just something that, I don't know, just kind of evolved?
I would say it evolved. Initially, we started writing the record over 2 years ago, and we really didn't have that in mind. But as we kind of got further into the arranging of the songs, before I got to the point of doing the vocals and lyrical stuff, we kind of just decided that we were just not going to have any screaming of any kind on the record, and just see what could be done with changing the songs to be more melodic versus aggressive.
Yeah, so more melodic, less aggressive. I guess my question is, how much of that did that change the tracks then, I guess, is, where I would ask, of course I would ask, this is silly. I'm the one doing the interview. I think I just had an out-of-body experience where I realized that I'm interviewing you. Death of Wolves. So, you mentioned you started writing the record, a couple of years ago. So with the track Death of Wolves, where was that in the writing process, or at least in the arranging process? I guess my big question is, at what point was the record taking on the shape that it is today, or what song kind of maybe set the tone for that?
I would say this one, and there's another track on the record called Hedgerider, kind of set the tone for the whole thing. But this song was written kind of late into the process, because we had written 3 or 4 other songs that just weren't fitting in with the changes we had made to everything else. So this song was written, later down the road in that process to kind of fit more in with the rest of the material.
All right, come back from the track Attunement. Now, call me crazy. Is that a word?
It is a word. It's weird if you type it into Google or anything, it will say it's spelled incorrectly, but at the same time, it will bring up responses to it being spelled that way. So it is a word, but I don't necessarily know, I don't know if it's in the dictionary, but there are definitely things associated with it. If you look it up, there's attunement is a reference in psychology to being kind of in tune, for the lack of a better term, with someone else around you, or having a greater understanding of someone to the point where you kind of genuinely feel what they're expressing to you, more in the lines of having empathy, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is a word, but it's a weird one because it did strike me as odd early on because I had heard it mentioned in passing and then kind of looked it up. But then every time I would type it into something, like as I was writing the lyrics or things of that nature, it would still say it wasn't spelled correctly or that it wasn't a thing, but it definitely is.
There's a Wikipedia page dedicated to it, so I'm taking a look at it, and something to do with energy medicine, at least according to a lot of the Wikipedia type stuff.
Yeah, there's a whole kind of spiritual and emotional healing aspect associated with it, and then there's some medical stuff associated with it. It's got a lot of branches, and then there's even further into it with the spirituality stuff. You get into stuff to do with different types of that's kind of where the witchcraft thing came in at some point too. Into the whole idea is that there's some of that stuff associated with the word attunement as well. So.
Okay. Now, I guess despite all of that, it clearly was something that you were doing some research on. So was it the lyrical content that brought you to this word and this concept, or how did attunement come into the track or into the album anyway?
Yeah, it's the lyrical content was written first, and it is the closest thing I think into a love song that the band has ever done in some degree. It's more so someone looking for that versus having it. But I was trying to find words that were arguably stronger than love itself. So that was one of the words that came up in my searches. And then when I kind of did some exploring into the meaning behind it, it seemed to make sense.
Wow. There was a lot of attunement then on that.
Yeah, for the lack of better term.
Beautiful. All right, now, if you look at these tracks, Death of Wolves and Attunement, then you'll be super excited to know that there is a full album called Modern Witchcraft, which was released via Red Moth Records in May. Now, I actually love that track title, Modern Witchcraft. Something very unique about that, because obviously when we think of witchcraft, we kind of think of, I don't know, olden times or things that haven't changed or long ago pagan religions or something, but the idea that it's modern means, I don't know, you're using LED lights instead of candles or something. Or a hot plate instead of a cauldron. But I guess my question is, Modern Witchcraft, take us through this. What is this album about? And I mean, even the artwork itself for the album is really quite illusory.
Yeah, it's originally the idea for the record title kind of came from people being attached to their phones, like kind of in a trance or under a spell with their devices and things of that nature, and kind of how that stuff polarizes social interaction or takes away from social interaction, when the idea, I suppose, is that you could arguably communicate better, but you still see a lot of instances where if you go to a restaurant or a concert or something, when we were allowed to do that, you'd see more people looking at their phones than speaking to the person across from them. So that's kind of where the idea came from. But then, yeah, there's, other elements of it, like just kind of the things that we're now kind of attached to and that are kind of norms that everyone seems to be, the internet and things of that nature. People get upset if some place doesn't have Wi-Fi and stuff. It's a lot of first world problems, I suppose.
You're not wrong, Steve. You're not wrong. Groovy. Sweet. Now, I guess when it comes to the tracks, Death of Wolves and Attunement, my big question then is Modern Witchcraft. Why these two tracks to chat about today? Is this what we should expect from the record?
Yeah, I think they're a pretty solid example of what the record is as a whole. They lend themselves to the title of the record, and they kind of Death of Wolves opens the record, so it sets in motion things, and Attunement's towards the end of the record, so it's just kind of a nice way to approach it. That that's kind of what the whole record is going to sound like for the most part. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Steve, things are I'm sure you know, pretty closed down, so that normally we wouldn't be chatting. We'd be chatting about tours and summer festivals, but since that's not going on at the moment, normally, since I would ask that question, and I can't, the question is there any other news that maybe I didn't bring up that you wanted to share?
No, I would say by the time this is up, the record will have been out as of tomorrow, so the 22nd. So it'll be available on all the digital platforms, and then physical stuff will come later for shipping, but there's delays on a lot of physical product, unfortunately, due to the virus. So that's going to be a few months down the line, it seems like.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, Steve, unless there's anything else aside from that you wanted to bring up, I just wanted to thank you for coming on to the Rock Metal Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.